A couple weeks ago, Vaush put out a drama video clipped from one of his recent streams where he rants about the beef he has with another citizen of the land of BreadTube, a video essayist named Sean. Apparently, Sean was subtweeting about Vaush and people like him when he said, not to exaggerate, but every political debate stream is pointless. Despite constant reassurances from Vaush to his fans in the chat that he is not trying to make this a drama video about the beef between him and Sean, it's pretty clear it's unequivocally about the beef between him and Sean.
And we're not going to get into drama. Anyone who watches my stream knows Sean is a dumb fuck on Twitter. I don't know if it's the Brit brain. I don't know if it's some Twitter disease. We're not going to linger on that. Enormously, condescending tweets there. I mean, I guess that's his shtick. I feel like I'm always defending myself against a bunch of accusations that aren't rooted in reality. It seems like it's the same vague tweeting that Sean exclusively does. I really do think that Sean's kind of a piece of shit. I think he's a condescending snob. I really don't think highly of him. Oh my god, the British thing doesn't help. This really isn't supposed to be a drama thing.
Look, I'm not here to defend Sean, because I think that when it comes down to it, Sean and most of the other people of BreadTube suffer from the same kind of disease that Vaush does, presuming that what they do is more than just a kind of highbrow form of entertainment in the politics genre, in the same way that reading the newspaper is entertainment for a certain class of individual. What I'm trying to do here is fight back against the central thesis of Vaush's video, which seems to be that Vaush is building a political movement that is taking place solely in online spaces such as YouTube. It's a movement whose main goal is to convince people to move away from the right-wing ideas like those espoused by Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro, and get them to start believing in leftist ideas like those espoused by ContraPoints and Vaush. Vaush sees himself and other leftist content creators within the BreadTube community as leaders who build this supposed political movement through a diversity of tactics. Tactics, in his mind, means styles of media, including video essays and debates.
You know, one of the things that I was taught, and this goes all the way back, I was learning this back in early college, how do you build a good movement?
He thinks he's building a movement.
And one of the ways you do that is through diversity of tactics. That's really, really important. Because people are different, Even if you all share the same political values, people are really different. Some people legitimately get their political perspectives from, reading books. Not from reading book recommendations from content creators they already agreed with, but legit just reading books. Ooh, okay.
I'm not even gonna touch this one with a 10-foot pole.
There are people who watch, really chill sort of news videos on YouTube, and they like that, and there are people who like really aggressive, angry debate stuff. I mean, the ways in which a person can be exposed to leftist ideas are about as diverse as the ways in which humans have been communicating for thousands of years. That's why lefties care about making sure that movies and video games and stuff have progressive messaging, that because you don't want all forms of media to be full of right-wingers who are very effective at disseminating their ideas in those formats. You want to be able to push back against that.
Here's the thing. I agree with what Vaush is saying here in the sense that I think it's worthwhile to push back against right-wing ideas in media by promoting leftist ideas in media. That's a noble thing for an entertainer to do. However, I draw the line at framing this goal as a political movement. A political movement does not stop at the goal of convincing other people you're right. A political movement takes things a step further. It encourages political action. Vaush would know this about political movements if he'd ever spent any time being part of one. That is to say, if he spent any time organizing for a political cause. To be honest, I'm starting to doubt if he's ever done something like that in his life. Correct me if I'm wrong, Vaush, because if I'm wrong, then that means you've got some serious wires crossed. Remember the script Bernie gave us for door knocking? Your first goal was to convince the person on the other side of that door to vote for Bernie in the primary. After you convince them that Bernie is the best candidate, you help them make a plan for voting. You ask them to commit. You help them figure out where they're going to vote. What day? What time? Do they need a ride? Who are they going to take with them? How will they get there? The specifics are important to help the person remember their commitment to the cause. Next, you ask them to join you. You say, hey, you want to come knock on doors with us? And if they can't donate their time, perhaps you might suggest that they donate their money. The Bernie campaign script is just an example of what effective political movements do. They mobilize people. They galvanize them. They get them to turn their political beliefs into political actions. They get them to commit to specific actions for furthering a political goal. Here's the thing. Convincing chuds to become leftists is not an effective political movement because it doesn't take that extra step of turning beliefs into action. The self-described liberal debate bro, known as Destiny, points this out on a recent debate stream once, where he asked Vaush why he's never organized his followers into political action before. Vaush responded that he had simply never thought of it. Look, there's no one who despises the words that come out of Destiny's mouth more than me, but he was right this time. If all you're doing is convincing people to stop watching Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and instead watch ContraPoints and Vaush, you're not effectively utilizing your platform to further your political goals. At least Destiny is actually organizing working people and turning their ideas into action. What is Vaush doing? The answer is simple. Vaush is doing nothing except for entertaining people and collecting a check. And before you come at me criticizing Vaush for, yeah, you participate in society, curious, I'm very intelligent, let me be clear. There's nothing wrong with Vaush participating in a capitalist society the way he is currently doing. Entertainment has value. Everyone deserves to have access to entertainment. And in a capitalist system, entertainers should have the ability to survive off their talents and abilities, same as everyone else. Again, the issue I take is with Vaush's framing of what he does as an entertainer. He speaks about what he does as if he's an activist, someone who is taking a stand for what he believes and encouraging his followers to do the same. But this isn't what he's doing, and that's what pisses me off, especially when he starts justifying this framing by talking about Gamergate.
One of the issues I have with the modern online left is that all of you are about 5 years old. You weren't here for Gamergate.
Wrong.
Oh man, you weren't here for Gamergate. You have no idea how bad things can get.
Wrong.
Okay? We are living in a relative utopia of left-leaning content and its availability online, okay? You can't even begin to fathom how right-leaning all online mediums were, with the possible exception of, like, Tumblr, and I guess that's it.
Wrong.
It was really bad. Let me tell you, I'll set the stage, okay?
Here we go.
So, I've been left-leaning since, like, 16 or 17, so I guess for about 10 years now. But I've been a leftist for about 6 or 7 years, I guess. Or at least, you know, I mean, it's a gradual process, but basically that's the case.
So what you're saying is you were a chud during the Gamergate era.
And I was online, and I've been doing political stuff online for a while. If anyone saw my old debates with Destiny, you would know that. And back then, I mean, back in 2014, 2015, the internet had nothing for us. Nothing for us.
So I'm going to push back against this in more detail in a few moments, but as he's saying it, I just really want to let you know how much it makes my blood boil because of how patently incorrect he is about this statement, that there was nothing. It's just wrong.
The extent to which the left was represented politically were a bunch of incredibly small and, effectively, when it comes to outreach, meaningless feminist YouTube channels that existed exclusively to get bullied by massive conservative channels.
Pay attention to his language here. They existed to get bullied. They were meaningless.
That was all of YouTube. And there were huge conservative figures, massive, massive figures, who moved hundreds of thousands, possibly millions, of people over to the right because they were able to engage in the type of coverage that people like Sean dismiss today.
I can confirm that conservative content was not all of YouTube. I was a leftist who was online for the entirety of the Gamergate era. And yet somehow I was not swayed by the so-called rhetorical skills of Sargon of Akkad and Shoe on Head and Thunderfoot and the Amazing Atheist and all their racist, sexist, bigoted bullshit the way you and apparently so many others were. I was part of the skeptic/gamer community, gamer adjacent, perhaps. And once I saw what was happening with the rise of anti-SJW culture in those spaces, I quickly vacated those spaces. I took a step back and I made myself at home in the many leftist spaces that existed during that time. I know these spaces existed outside of Tumblr because I quite literally inhabited them. I'm living proof that it was possible to be a leftist and consume leftist content online during the era of Gamergate. Listen, I'm not saying this to tout my moral superiority over you or anyone else who fell for this onslaught of conservative content being produced in the era of Gamergate. I am simply saying this to prove that what you are arguing is inherently false. Also, why are you calling these feminist YouTube channels meaningless? You're talking about real people here. Kat Black was producing amazing content during the Gamergate era. I know this because I was watching it in real time. I actually found her channel specifically because I exited the skeptic community. Same thing with Riley J. Dennis. Also, what about that poor kid Milo Stewart? I wouldn't say that Milo Stewart existed to be bullied. They're still around. And they're a real person. Perhaps when you speak about people like them and all the others who were relentlessly bullied during this time, you should extend to them the same amount of compassion you hold in this video for people you actively support, like ContraPoints and Lindsay Ellis, who were also victims of targeted harassment campaigns. You say that these people were effectively useless because their channels were small and no one was watching them unless they were getting bullied by big conservative channels. This analysis fails to take into consideration the fact that conservative YouTube channels didn't get popular simply because they were effective at disseminating information using their rhetoric. They got popular because YouTube enabled it. They made spreading those ideas extremely lucrative. People were cranking out conservative talking points because YouTube was paying them a shit ton of money to do it. Yet instead of criticizing the YouTube algorithm, you are criticizing the leftist creators who suffered under its reign. As if what they were saying didn't count like what you were saying counts, simply because of the way YouTube was designed to crush them. You think that these online leftists were ineffective because they weren't raking in the cash like the conservative YouTube channels were at the time, but you're wrong. Being effective as a leftist has little to do with followers and subscribers and views. The real world of real-life activism is often thankless and without any sorts of rewards besides the fact that these are the people who are actually making a difference. Let me tell you a little story to demonstrate my point. Let me set the stage for you. It's 2020 and it's hot as balls outside. Plus there's a goddamn pandemic going on. I'm standing outside 7-Eleven with a teenager from the DSA. We're both wearing masks and socially distancing, of course. It's just the two of us. The reason we're standing here is because we need 30 signatures from people who live in this district so that we can get a non-binary socialist to have their name on the ballot. It's a long shot. We knew going into this that even if this 20-something-year-old socialist got their name on the ballot, they were going to be the underdog, and it was going to be an uphill battle against an entrenched and well-connected opponent. Our follower counts were relatively small, but you want to know something interesting? We got those 30 signatures we needed, and when the election in November rolled around, the non-binary socialist, whose name we got on the ballot that day, won their election. They are now a member of my hometown's city council, and so far they have successfully pushed for hazard pay for essential workers and stood up for leftist values when no one else will speak. They are pushing our city to the left in real time, and me and that kid I stood outside 7-Eleven with were part of getting them elected. That's right, just us and our shitty, minuscule follower counts. In one single story from my personal life, I have demonstrated to you that follower count has little to do with effectiveness. Yet I can imagine how interesting a situation like mine would have gotten if I had a massive fan club of leftists who looked up to me like daddy. If I was in Vaush's shoes, mobilizing leftists to get that non-binary socialist elected in my city would have been a hell of a lot easier. I'm not telling you this story to tell you I'm better than you because of what I did, Vaush. I just think that if you have the balls to imply you're part of a political movement, then maybe you should actually be part of that political movement.
Man, if you weren't around for the Gamergate days, if you weren't around for what it was like back then you have no idea what the consequences are for not embracing diversity of tactics.
There he goes again with that term, diversity of tactics.
A lot of lefties want to return to the old days, it feels like. A lot of, or maybe they just act that way. They act like they just want to go back to being like an irrelevant social pocket on the internet that doesn't actually have a fighting chance at dominating the narrative in any reasonable way. They want to go because they attack success. Who gets attacked? Lindsay Ellis gets attacked. ContraPoints gets attacked. PhilosophyTube gets attacked. Every large, God knows I get attacked. Every large left-leaning person wants to take down is harangued by these people who just dislike it when their political side succeeds, which is so insane to me.
You know what's insane to me, Vaush? It's insane to me that you're framing success for a leftist in terms of follower count. The money they make doing the job of entertaining people on YouTube. I don't think that that's success for leftism. And I think that you framing success in terms of popularity on YouTube is bad for the movement.
Because they want it to be, I think they just want leftism to be a moral signifier. See, leftism makes you a good person. This is a very simplistic take. This is in their mind. Leftism makes you a good person, so the more people are leftist, the harder it is to discern from amongst them who is a good person. So by having as few leftists as possible, that moral signifier means more. They want to be a martyr. They want to be, unique and individual in that. But yeah, they want to be exceptional, like one of the few, constantly fighting to build walls and gates and narrow the ranges by which people can be considered a leftist.
Listen, I don't care about moral signifiers. I don't care about figuring out who is and who isn't a leftist. In fact, I don't think I'm educated enough to define what the word leftist even means, nor do I particularly care about that definition. What I care about is concrete, this is real progress to the left. I don't want to narrow the ranges by which people can be considered a leftist, not even by a little bit. What I want is for leftists to take their ideas offline and become more politically active in their communities and in the world. Can you imagine what the world would be like if the fans of Vaush and every BreadTube content creator awakened in their communities like leftist sleeper cells across the country, across the world? Every one of us has power, real political power. And Vaush is essentially lying to his audience by allowing them to believe that the best thing they can do as a leftist right now is to watch Vaush debate random people on the internet simply because every now and then he might change a chud's mind or empower a teenager with some rhetorical quip they can use against their transphobic parents. I'm not asking Vaush to stop doing these things. I'm not asking him to stop doing debates. His content is entertaining, and there is value in that. And God knows we need to empower more trans teens and make them feel safe and loved and supported. What I'm asking him to do is take his opinion of himself seriously. You want to be a leader in a movement? Then be a leader in a movement. Use your massive platform for good. Vaush, you could get your people to organize for the PRO Act right now. You could gamify it. You could create an accountability system in your Discord. You could talk about it in your streams. You could help your fans craft letters and make phone calls. You could do phone banking sessions over Zoom to contact undecided senators. You could do this for political issues big and small, on a national scale, like the PRO Act, or on a local scale, like the effort to defund the police. Figure out what you want your issue to be and hammer away at it every single time you get on camera. You can still entertain, you can still have fun, you can still do debates. But if you're going to say you're building a movement, you have to live up to the promise of what that means. What's stopping you? What do you have to lose?